That is because 90 seconds after whatever has triggered you no longer is part of the problem. So if Shannon and I are in an argument, after 90 seconds, we are now extrapolating the past, our experiences as a child, as a teenager, in relationships and friendships that have gone south, and we're bringing all of that baggage and now we're throwing it in the middle of the circle that we're arguing and be like, and then here's all of this baggage to take. So after 90 seconds, we are no longer actually dealing with the current situation. Welcome to Permission to Be, where the messy middle finally gets a microphone.
Because let's be honest, life is not a highlight reel.
Here, we laugh at the absurd stuff, cry at the real stuff,
and talk about what it actually takes to find your way back to yourself. Hi. Welcome to Permission to Be. I am Shannon McClintock.
I am Jane Bach.
Goodness, we're happy to be here with you.
Episode 6.
Is it for you? Like, this does not feel at all like work. This just is.
It is fun, especially because before Shannon hits record, we get to have our little mini date catch up on what's been going on in the last hour or.
I was just going to say.
And so we find ourselves saying like, okay, let's just hit play so that way we can record as we're continuing to catch each other up.
Correct. As we're talking, we're like, this is the podcast. So just hit record. That being said, about this being fun and light, we're going to tackle a topic today.
It's very apropos, too, for the day.
It's apropos for where Jane finds herself today. And it is something that I am going to put a PSA out there that it's probably going to make you a little charged, the listener.
Yeah, that's true.
Because what we're going to talk about today is one of the most invaluable things that you and I have both learned over our years of self-development, right? Over our years of therapy and trying to figure out how to parent and undo generational trauma, all the things. This one concept has been a big one for us, wouldn't you say?
100%. More so is that we've learned the one phrase that Shannon will share next, but also that there are different ways that we're going to address it, because we've also learned on this podcast that there might be one way we explain it, but you might learn it from a different avenue. And so we're going to approach it from different sides. So that way we're hopefully resonating with anyone who's listening today.
Yeah. So I think we've built the suspense. People are like, okay, so what is it? Drum roll, please. Clark Griswold.
No. That's like more like Caddyshack. My bad.
Oh, my husband is going to have like fist pump in the air that you just did Caddyshack.
Spalding. Yes. All right. What is it?
If you ever quote Fletch, it'll be even more. It is the idea that your triggers are your teachers.
I did this once to an in-law. I did not handle it very well. And I said, duly noted in a text. And I said, well, if there's anything we've learned is that triggers are your teachers. And you're triggered right now. So what is this lesson teaching you? Crickets.
Yeah, that's what I said. It's not a fun one to learn, right? Because so I think everybody probably knows what a trigger is, right? Like, so you're triggered. Essentially, you're pissed off, right?
Yeah,
like essentially something is upset. It's almost like a dog, like their hackles are up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it makes me go into overwhelm, or it makes me go into anger. It makes me go like I'm flustered. I'm irritated.
Spicy word. Ooh, another spicy word.
Irritated?
I think so. I have a 6.5-year-old.
General vocabulary for us.
When a 6-year-old says, Mom, I'm very irritated at the moment, you're like, well played. Well said.
No,
yeah.
Coming from a 6-year-old, yes, that is a spicy word.
Take the compliment.
So thank you. I receive it. What we're talking about is that when we are triggered, the gut reaction is that somebody else did this to us.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, and I think that that's pretty across the board is you're like, I can't believe that person did that to me. And here is where the big lesson is that in those moments where you are triggered, where you're mad, where you're irritated, where you're annoyed, where you're resentful, whatever the trigger is, in that moment, it is some sort of mirror for something that you are needing to learn.
I feel like this is therapy for me because you said all those words and I was like, I feel all of that right now.
Right? Jane is
I
triggered.
got the twitchy
by
eye.
the way. Yeah.
I'm sweaty. My hands are shaking.
And I full connection if you are listening to this and you are triggered.
Oh, yeah.
That like you're telling me when my husband does X and it triggers me that that's supposed to be a teaching moment.
And that it's actually not about your husband.
Exactly. And
I
that's
know.
the even worse part, right?
But how wonderful is this that I'm willing to be vulnerable today? And we're going to talk about this and we're going to work through my charged emotions together. And let's see if on the outside of this episode, if I do okay. Because we have said this, I think, in every single episode. When emotions are high, intellect is low. And I'm high on emotions, which means Shannon is going to be my person to help me gain back the control on my intellect.
And I think that rule number 1 of getting triggered is exactly, you just said it. I'm just distilling it.
I know, but I love when she gives me rules. I'm like, I'm going to write this down. What is it?
Got my pen ready. Rule number 1 of being triggered is realizing that in that moment that emotions are high, your intellect is low.
Totally.
That you don't make moves from that triggered spot. You pause.
I thought you were going to say rule number 1 is we listen, we don't judge. That's just wishful thinking at the moment.
She's like, I don't want anybody judging me today. I think that is fair. I think that that's a long-standing rule. That's not for anything. We listen, we don't judge. And if you are that person that's like, I'm triggered right now, my emotions are high, realize we are not judging you. This was not a concept that was easily learned. This was a concept that when I was told it, I was triggered and I was mad. I was like, wait, what? Right. You're going to tell. And I remember, I actually remember exactly when I learned that concept.
How old were you?
No. Come on. It was within the last couple of years.
Oh,
this was not like an old topic. But there was a person that was on a regular Zoom call for our business. And I was so triggered by that person. Just how they held themselves, how they would talk, how they would insert themselves. And I remember bringing it up to our therapist, Chrissy, and she had the audacity.
I'm
to
just
look at
Shannon's
me and
commentary,
say,
her inner thoughts right now.
Truly, in that moment, I was mad. And she asked me, she was like, what is it about her that is holding up a mirror to what you need to see in yourself?
You're afraid.
Or what you're afraid to see in yourself. And mind you, this is not a person that at the time I liked. This was a person that I was like, I don't like anything about that. And I was supposed to look in the mirror and see what that person was supposed to teach me, what my trigger was supposed to teach me. I was mad.
All I want to do is growl.
I may have.
I think Audible should now hire me to start reading books. I can get real
like, I'm getting real good at my growl. I think that's generally the men that growl in those books. But
let's not be sexist here. I could do it.
No doubts. I have no doubts that you could. But I remember that. And then I remember having to pause. I remember having to think,
sure,
okay. And I didn't actually know the term. You had not gone through all the different camps and things. So we didn't know the term of when emotions are high, intellect is low. But I had to sit there and look at it and be like, this person has the audacity to speak their mind openly, regularly. Mm-hmm. They show up confidently. They don't have this like bright, smiley look on their face because they didn't feel it inside. And it took me sitting there with that trigger, sitting with it, looking at it, this mirror that's right in front of me of what is this person mirroring to me that I'm resentful of. And you and I know from what we've done that resentment comes from like the shoulds. Like, I should do that. He should do that. He should have been home by now. They shouldn't do it. Should, right? And that was the first time that really clicked for me. And I was like,
sucker punch.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
But does that person still trigger you from time to time?
Not really. No. I mean, occasionally. I mean, I think it's fair. I don't think so. You and I both talk about triggers as like buttons, right? Mm-hmm. It's like a button on you that's like push. And it's like,
I know someone's like, just remove the button. And you're like, that is such
great
bad advice. Because you're like, that button is sharp and it is literally holding on to my shirt.
It's built into my identity. Thanks. I'll just take that off. It's just like a little button that you put on you, like the little pin buttons. This is like somebody who doesn't overthink things coming to a person who does overthink things, i.e. me, and being like, well, just don't think about it. And I'm like,
just don't do it. Just get outside and go for a walk and let it go.
Like, that's when I'm triggered. And I'm like, oh my God.
You're triggered on top of the triggered advice.
Exactly. I'm triggered and then I'm getting triggering advice that then triggers me.
Triggered
It's a double
squared.
whammy, right? It's great. This is healing, folks.
But I think it's interesting because we both have said, like, there are times when you'll be on the couch reading a book as I, and our spouses will be cleaning loudly. Or my husband is watching TV and I'll come downstairs and be like, what? Like, we have things that we have to accomplish. And so I'll be loudly stacking the dishes in the dishwasher, which is so passive aggressive. And in that moment, I recognize he's fine. And does it really matter if the dishes are loaded or not at the moment? No. Did I grow up with that everything had to be accomplished because my worth was predicated on what I got done? Yes. That's why I'm triggered.
That is the brilliant point. Rule
I know.
number 2.
I jumped.
You're teeing me up, dude.
I know.
Rule number 2.
Best friends unite.
I know. I feel like the intro song needs to be "People, let me tell you about my best friend."
People
That
should
was the
know that,
only
like,
time I will sing on here because
no, it was really good. When I'm triggered, I'm spicy. So
you
this
are
is
spicy and I love
You're
it.
catching me at a good time.
I'm here for it. No, so
Good.
this is rule number 2 of triggers are your teachers, which is that, and this one stings just as bad as the first one, possibly worse. And I'm sorry, but it's the idea that somebody can trigger you without them having done anything wrong.
Yeah. So I learned this at neuroscience camp. I just love saying that.
And I love that I have this picture of like riding to a school bus with a duffel. Like that's,
I mean, it kind of was me. I came in with my notes, my highlighter, my sticky note. Like, I was like, I'm here for this.
she's the pocket protector kid.
Yeah, I actually am.
Yeah, I know.
But they were saying that in all situations, so this isn't just if you're triggered, in all situations, 90% of what is occurring isn't actually what's occurring. So
Yes.
you and I are having a conversation. 90% of the conversation is what's happening outside. I'm
Yes.
triggered because of some things that went down. My dog is jumping up and down. My husband just got home with the kids, so he shut the door, right? I'm sweaty. I can feel like my armpits are like the shirt is wet and I don't like this feeling right now. But we're talking. And yet all of these other things are actually influencing the conversation.
Yes. And that was the exact, and this happens a lot. So in human design, I'm a manifester. My husband's a manifesting generator. It doesn't matter if you don't know what that means. But essentially, my husband has a lot more endurance energy. Your triggers are your teachers. Your triggers are your teachers.
I'm going to keep that in. So
Jane and I were both raised in families where rest was earned, right?
Oh,
You did not get to rest until everything was done. And and you and I also were raised in families where your, like, how much you were loved was predicated on how much you do, how successful you are, how easy you make it look, your grades, how much you accomplished. It's not just our families. I think that's how, if we did a poll across millennials and Gen X, that's just the world that we were raised in, right? And I think that's why you and I both come up with our husbands at the end of the day. And I'm like, I did this and I did this and I did this and I did this and I did this. Now love me because I did all that thing.
I did it last night even. And Seth's like, stop, we're not doing this anymore.
Yeah, right.
Because I
That's a
just wanna
hard thing
love
to
you.
break.
You're
So
like, oh,
when I'm
right.
sitting on the couch reading and my husband is cleaning around me, I get triggered. And this is the perfect example of you can be triggered without somebody doing anything wrong. Because in that moment, my husband is cleaning because he feels like cleaning. He's not cleaning to be mean to me. Now, sometimes you can tell the difference between cleaning, like you said, slamming doors and stuff like
Right.
that. But then it takes me sitting in that trigger and being, okay, I'm triggered. Why am I triggered? Why am I so mad that I'm trying to read and my husband is cleaning? I should be happy that my husband is cleaning. And that is because of my programming, right? He is doing nothing wrong in that moment. And I am triggered. It's the two things can be true. And understanding that somebody else can trigger the ever-loving SHIT out of you, and they actually did nothing wrong, tells you how much your triggers are your teachers.
But I want you guys to know it's not that he's cleaning, right? Or it's not that my husband was doing the dishes last night. I had a very long day and he chose to make dinner and he chose to help clean up because it was an act of service of love. Now, was I triggered in that moment? Yes, not because he was doing it, but because I felt guilt that I wasn't helping.
Yes.
So it's not, I want to be really clear. Sometimes you are triggered in the way that they clean or the way they eat or the way that they speak or, fill in the blank. Or are you triggered because you feel guilt and shame because of the way you were raised? And in that moment, I stopped. And again, because I've done this work recently and I said, I'm so grateful for you today, honey. Like, I really appreciate you taking this and helping so I can just sit on the couch and have a moment. And in that moment, I acknowledge I'm grateful. I love him and I don't feel shame or guilt, but I did. I recognized it. And I quickly was able to then pivot. So this isn't something that's going to all of a sudden magically disappear once you learn it. It's an active, lifelong lesson that constantly comes into your life.
I'm so glad that you brought that up because that happened to me yesterday as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, I did the neuroscience camp. I did the first one this past weekend, which we could do a lot of podcasts on that.
We could.
But there were a bunch of dishes in the sink yesterday, and I worked in the morning, met up with a friend. Like, we talked about a lot of really amazing stuff, business, all sorts of stuff. Come home, get my daughter, make lunches, and then I'm going to the grocery store. I, at that point, had not had time to clean up the kitchen yet. And so there was dishes. And I came in to leave with my daughter to go grocery shopping, and my husband was doing the dishes. Instant trigger. Because I was like, he's in my brain, he's judging me that I didn't do the dishes. So then he's got to do it. And it's like, I'm not good enough because I couldn't clean the dishes before X time. I don't have all of my ducks in a row. My house doesn't look perfect, whatever it is. And I'm not a super clean person. I'm not like sloppy. I'm not dirty, but I can be messy. And it's like, even when my husband is like, yeah, you're a little bit messy.
You're triggered.
Trigger. He did nothing wrong in that moment. He's stating the obvious.
He's just cleaning.
He's cleaning.
And he's also not pointing fingers saying like, because of you, there's nothing there.
And he's trying to do it to help me, right?
Have you ever, well, we know this, but I don't know if you've been sharing this with anyone else. So Brene Brown talks about how she and her husband were in the Midwest. They spend their times on the lake, and every morning they go and they swim the lake. They swim to one shoreline and then back. And I'll make this efficient, this story, because I want to get to other examples.
I don't know. This one's so good. I just kind of think, tell it.
Take my time.
It's so good.
So she and her husband, and it's in one of her books, they're swimming and he's slightly ahead of her in the water. And she's just feeling euphoric, and this abundance of love overcomes. And she's like, honey, I love this. This is amazing. Isn't this great? And he goes, yeah, Brene. And in that moment, right, she's triggered. Why would he dismiss me so quick? Why was he so quick to just say, yeah? Does he love me enough? Or, does he think? And so she tries again. I love you. Isn't this wonderful? And he goes, yeah, Brene, yeah. And he keeps swimming and swimming. And so in that moment, she allowed, instead of sitting with it and speaking out loud and addressing it, she now is triggered because she's thinking, he doesn't love me. Does he think I'm overweight? Does he not want to be married to me, right? She went dark. And that's being a human. I do that too, even today. And they go back and forth and they get out of the water. And she finally is like, honey, do you not love me anymore? I'm working on trying to lose the weight, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he goes, are you kidding me? No, I was having a panic attack. I saw the boats going back and forth and I thought of our kids swimming and I thought how they could get underneath one of the boats and really hurt themselves. You're delusional. And isn't it amazing that she was in one path thinking of a script of the way her life was going to be projected over the next week, month, year, et cetera. And he's just trying to stay alive. And yet they're in the same moment, in the same situation, right? Your husband, Shannon, is cleaning. You come back. You're in a different 90% of what you're experiencing is very different than the 90% that Jared is experiencing. And you came to a conclusion that had nothing to do with Jared.
Exactly.
And so the moral of her story is a very simple line that says, when you're triggered by someone and you want to address it, the narrative in my head is X. And so Shannon and I have had some of these moments where I'm very short in a text. It has nothing to do with her. I've got kids crawling all over me. I have a deadline. There's a phone call. I'm supposed to get on a Zoom. The dog just vomited. And she goes, how are you? And I'm like, I'm fine. And in her mind, she's like, she hates me. I did something wrong. Why doesn't she not love me? Right. And so she's triggered by it. And it's like, no, I'm just 90% of my life. And now you got to just one word. And so Shannon and I have now learned, she's like, hey, the narrative in my head is that you're upset and I'd like to know what I can do to fix that. And all right, pause, right? She's taking a moment. She's vulnerable. No, it has nothing to do with you. This is what's going on currently in my life. And so I think this is one avenue you can take. And we learned it from Brene Brown of triggers are your teachers, but also the narrative in my head might be completely different than the situation and the narrative in that person's head in that moment.
And I will tell you, I use that a lot. So I use that a ton in my marriage.
The narrative in my head.
I always say, for me, narrative's spicy. I always say the story in my head.
Yeah.
The story in my head is blah, 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 blah. So
narrative is spicy.
Narrative is, right? The narrative in my head. Because we also use this with our kids. Like we're trying to teach our kids that as well.
Yeah.
But, it's like the dishes yesterday, right? In that moment, Now, I know that that's not where he's coming from. So that was not a moment where I felt like I needed to use that term. But if I wanted to go into that moment, then I would go up to him and say, the story in my head is that you're frustrated with me because I didn't get to the dishes fast enough, and that you're doing the dishes because you're frustrated that I didn't do them yet. And then he would say, no, I'm just trying to help you. I see how much you have going on right now, and this was something I could do to help you. I don't think in the history of ever of me using the story that's created in my head, has that story actually been right? It might have been partially right.
No, 100%.
But most of the time, it's not right. That is, I always like to say it's trigger meets trigger, right? And in a marriage, and this is something you and I wanted to talk about on here, is that the people who are going to trigger you most are the people who are closest to you. They know the triggers, right? They know where the buttons are. And it somehow, as luck would have it,
nothing to do with them.
Well, not only that, but generally, when you find a partner, somehow, kismetly, your trigger hits their trigger.
Well, yeah.
And it's just, and it is this thing where if you don't realize that triggers are your teachers and you don't realize that somebody can trigger you without having done anything wrong, that's where people fall into the blame game. And they become a victim because you did that to me. And this is where we can go into next, because I do believe that you are triggered and it isn't that somebody else didn't do something wrong. I do believe that like you're triggered and somebody did something wrong. So I do also want to talk about triggers are your, even in those moments where somebody did screw up, you still have something you can learn from it.
Well, let's talk about it. I love that part.
Well, but I want to take 1 second and talk about the kid, like your kids.
Okay.
Because I think probably as moms, at least I know, and I think there's usually one kid that triggers you more than your other if you have multiple children. One of the biggest lessons that I learned, and I think I learned it from Instagram, not going to lie. I'm trying to figure out who to quote on it, right? Give credit where credit is due. I'm pretty sure it was somewhere on Instagram. Somebody said, because my daughter, she is a mini me.
Yeah,
she is me reincarnate. My son is my husband reincarnate. My parents actually joke that they've never seen a person give birth to themselves. That's me. My daughter triggers me more than quite possibly anybody in this world.
So same. And my son triggers my husband.
Exactly. My son triggers my husband.
And I wonder, right? The psychology of like, it's the sex. I am a girl, my daughter, right? Is there some correlation there?
So here's where this person blew my mind, is because the things that I'm triggered with about my daughter are generally the things that were not, what's the word I'm looking for? Desirable in me as a kid. So in that moment, like for instance, when she's super loud, when either of my kids are crazy loud, especially indoors, it triggers me, right? I'm like, shut it down. Why?
Because children are supposed to be seen, not heard. That's how I was raised.
And so what this person said is when you are triggered by your child, it is your inner child who feels unsafe with their actions. So your body is immediately shut it down. Shut down the noise because your dad's going to be upset. Shut down the noise because kids are meant to be seen and not heard. Shut down the emotion when my daughter's overly emotional and she's crying over everything. I have to close my eyes and tell myself that I am safe. She is safe. It is okay. She's allowed to have these emotions. Because when I had those big emotions as a kid, I was told that I was too emotional.
I remember 2 Christmases ago, Shannon was visiting with her family and her daughter was being really passionate, and it was loud and it was all a little like octave higher than probably what anyone would really want to hear. But instead of freaking out and instead of reprimanding her or making her feel small, Shannon picked her up and took her to the other room and said, I love you. I'm here. Let's talk about it. Versus go to your room, reprimanding her, humiliating her, telling her to stop. And this was before Shannon and I had really like done a lot of the work. But even in that moment, Shannon at least had the grace to know that this is okay, that she's safe, and we're not going to do anything to diminish her spirit just because it might be a little uncomfortable for all of us. Because in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal.
But I will admit, I was triggered as hell.
Yeah, but you did great.
I was super triggered. And even now, so we do a thing in our house where I want my kids to have big emotions, right? They're not allowed to take them out on other people, but I do want them to have big emotions. I want them to feel safe crying. And, you know, I had a realization with my husband the other day. I don't really love crying in front of him, like full sobbing, like little tears is fine. But like, I'm talking about like crying game shower, right? I don't want to do that. Why is that? Because when I would cry as a kid, it was like, you're okay. You're okay. Shake it off. Rub some dirt on it. You're okay. You're okay. It was like, it was uncomfortable for my parents because that was a trigger for them, right? So then you want to shut it down because your inner child doesn't feel safe with that. So we do it like, get your cries out, but I want everyone to know. And it does get easier over time, the more that you do it. But with my daughter, if she's crying, and now she'll actually say like, I need to get my cries out. And I will sit there. But for the first, gosh, I don't know, 6 months of doing it.
Emotional.
I was holding her and she was crying. But the entire time I was in my own head telling my nervous system that it was okay. Because I was still triggered, right? It was like, oh my God, she just is crying so much. Why is she crying so much? Just stop crying. You're so emotional. It was the narrative that I heard. It's the programming in my head. And so it's me breaking it, holding her while she's crying and going, okay, we are safe. She is safe. I am safe.
But do you know what you're doing?
To cry.
I want to give you props to this. So I learned this recently, that when you are triggered, that's your amygdala that is triggered because of your pre-programming.
Your reptilian brain.
Yeah. And so in order to not only, let's say, help your children and assist them in that moment without degrading them or telling them, to squash it, I think of the hippocampus, the hippo, right? And the hippo takes a deep breath in the part of your brain and he breathes down on you. And so you actually have to take a physical breath and you have to breathe it out. But part 2, you have to say the words out loud. So, are you okay? No, I'm not okay. All right. I'm here for you. I love you. But just, you are safe. You are loved. I'm not going anywhere. And you can say it over and over because when you say it out loud, it's telling your brain, oh, this isn't my past programming coming into this situation. This is an actual experience that I'm having, but I'm not going to allow the past to come into this. So the breath and the saying it out loud really does calm your nervous system, your brain, until you're able to come to that place without rushing it that, okay, I got my cries out. I'm okay.
And I think this is the perfect segue to you talking about the 90 seconds.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I learned this and it blew my brain. So what I just explained about telling your brain you're okay and you're not taking the past experiences of your life and you're bringing them into the current situation. That is because 90 seconds after whatever has triggered you no longer is part of the problem. So if Shannon and I are in an argument, after 90 seconds, we are now extrapolating the past, our experiences as a child, as a teenager, in relationships, and friendships that have gone south, and we're bringing all of that baggage, and now we're throwing it in the middle of the circle that we're arguing and be like, and then here's all of this baggage to take. So after 90 seconds, we are no longer actually dealing with the current situation. We're now dealing with what we're talking about, and we've now added, right? Shan talks about removing those rocks off of our back. We've now just taken all the rocks of our past, we've put it on our backpack, and we're like, oh, and now here's all of this. And so to me, it's
almost like a fire. It's like this little bitty fire, right? You're triggered.
And now I'm pouring gasoline on it.
Exactly. I'm going to take all this firewood from past things and I'm going to throw it on that fire. And it was a little fire.
And now I blew it up.
And now I just blew it into something big.
So here's the greatest part. Children get this. So you can take a little clock and you can show in 90 seconds, are we actually still upset? Or are we upset because we just took everything in the past, right? So I didn't learn a lot of this. So when I was raising my children when they were younger, I was getting upset that they were crying. I was upset that they wouldn't sleep. I did the whole crying it out, right? Versus like loving them and holding them because that was what I was taught. And so now I say, okay, in 90 seconds, are we still going to be upset if I just hold you and I love you and you can cry and shout, but we're not going to bring anyone else into the mix. We're not pointing fingers. We're not shouting about anything else, just the moment. And my children both realized after 90 seconds, I'm okay. I'm safe.
And I can go ahead.
Well, and so now I've seen yesterday, I was working on a project. We had just finished in between our social studies and math. And they got into an argument because they're really into cardboard boxing and building these intricate villages. And something happened and one of the villages got squashed. And my son got really, really upset. And my daughter said, buddy, 90 seconds. Right now, you're taking the fact that like we've been upset in the past and you're throwing it at me right now. Please don't do that. And you're like,
your daughter is like Goodwill Hunting.
Totally.
In
Yeah,
an
she's Robin
8-year-old.
Williams.
Yeah.
100%. And I was thinking, gosh darn it. Like this really does work because if you practice what you preach and you do the repetition and you do the steps and you embody it, look at what the ripple effect has on your family. And it's not always going to be the case, right? There have been times when parents have to intervene and say, okay, let's take a break. We all need like a breather. But there are also these beautiful moments. It's something you can hold on to and remember when you're having those arguments. So 90-second rule.
And I will tell you that, and I remember whenever you told me this and being like, you know what, she's right. Because in those moments where I'm holding my daughter and she's getting her cries out, it's never more than 60 seconds, 90 seconds. And here's a point that I think is really great is that I don't think that most of us think of emotions as energy, right? That sadness or frustration or annoyance, that is energy. And basic physics is that energy cannot be created or destroyed, right? Energy just moves from one place to another. And I think what you're just talking about in that 90 seconds or, my daughter getting her cries out, that is moving the energy that you have right now from that trigger and getting it off of you, right? So that you're not actually carrying that anymore. And I think too many times we're triggered and we're just like, ugh, it's fine. I'll just get over it. Like, ugh, I'll just hold resentment for that person who triggered me, regardless if they did something wrong. I'm going to hold that trigger. I'm going to hold that resentment, but I'm not supposed to show emotion and weakness or irritation or annoyance. And so I'm just going to shove that down and keep that energy inside of me. And where I see it most prevalent is in my kids of like, okay, so let's say that I haven't done to my daughter, like, do you need to get your cries out? She will have this almost like it's like a cry motorcycle. It's like, ugh, because she has this energy that's built up and she has to go somewhere. An example I can use for someone who's listening is like whenever you have tears that feel like they're just like right there and you want to cry, but you're not letting yourself cry, that feeling is not going to go away until that energy is released.
Right. I used to grow up where the phrase shame on you, like shame on you. You shouldn't do this. Shame on you. And I also realized that in my parenting, before I learned a lot of these techniques and a lot of the psychology behind it was I would be triggered that my children were doing X or doing Y and be like, like to my son, like shame on you for not knowing better. And then it occurred to me, no, not shame on you. I'm going to have the shame go off of you. Like I'm brushing it off of you. There's no shame. Right? We are human beings. We are not perfect. We are imperfect and we are remarkable. And this is a learning moment. This isn't, do better. It's what did we learn from this? So I always tell now my kids, not shame on you, but shame off of you. And I'll like rub it off their shoulders. Like,
I love that.
Get off of you.
Nothing productive happens in shame. So before we dive into case study in shame being triggered, one thing that I do want to share for people because I do think that a lot of where we get triggered is spouses and kids or partners and kids, is some tips and tricks that you and I have come up with because remember, energy comes up. So then how do we move that energy? And this was something that I'm going to call you out here. You were very resistant to.
Probably.
We learned this at a retreat that we went to of that, that energy is there. So how do we move it? I remember one of our good friends, Blair Jones, taught us this. And it was, she was talking about how she got in a fight with her husband and she was all charged. And, like his version of getting the energy out was like laying on the floor and listening to love songs.
Right.
And she's like, I have Scorpio in me. Like that was not. And both you and I both have Scorpio in us. And so she's like, I had to go for a walk and kick rocks and spit. And here's the delineation is that all the tools that we're talking about, I like to call it like the fire breathing dragon. That fire has to come out, but it doesn't get to burn the people around you.
No. So what do we use? What are some of the tools?
One of my favorites, and both of my kids did this last night, is we have a plastic bat.
I gifted it to her. I want to take credit for this.
You totally did. Again, this idea came from Blair. And it is a way this one's really good when there's like rage or anger or like, and again, my kids are the ones that probably put me in this most like that, like I am seeing red right now. And there are two choices that I have in that moment is one, I can go, we call it in our family, move the mad. I can go move the mad, or I can store it and push it down. But then guess what's going to happen? My husband's going to come downstairs and I'm going to snap at him. and my kids are going to do something fairly benign and I'm going to snap at them.
But this goes back to episode 5. You were talking about the window of tolerance.
Exactly.
So if you store it, that means that this little window is now getting to be itty bitty, itty bitty.
Yep.
Because the moment something happens, you hit it and now you're raging.
But that rage energy is still there, right?
Right,
If
but
you
that's what
don't
I'm
get
saying.
it out, it's
Get
just
it
gonna.
out.
It's like pressure pot where it's like,
Right. Do you want to have a larger window so there's more room, or do you want to have it short so you can just constantly be triggered and erupt?
and this is what we do with our kids, and I do it myself, is move the mat. So sometimes that looks like beating the ever loving hell out of my bed with a bat, and
It
I've
actually
like
is
almost
very cathartic.
pulled muscles hitting that so hard. It might be like if there's a conversation that I had that made me just so triggered, I will go into my car and everything that I wanted to say that I didn't get to say, and I'm not saying it to anybody, but that energy is moving out of my body.
This is where Shannon and I talk about the 3 H's. Do you need to be heard? Do you need to be helped? Do you need to be hugged? So sometimes when Shannon and I are both triggered and charged, we will call one another and we'll just say, I need to be heard. And then if she wants someone to just listen and just like be like, yeah, and then what? And what else? And how do you feel? And she just gets full permission to be
Yeah.
messy and to just let every bad word, thought, phrase come out because there's no judgment. We're moving that energy out.
And it is okay
Oh, yeah.
to rage. But here's
And
the
it's
caveat.
It's good.
It's
as your
okay to
friend.
rage when you're not taking it out on somebody else.
Right, which is why it's good car, bat, friend. There's
And
no
I told her
judgment.
before, I was like, I need you to rage with me.
And I
she's
love
like,
it because I'm like,
"Let's go."
right, I didn't even know that I had any energy, but that window of tolerance apparently was getting small. So I'm like, let's open this bad boy up.
But here's where I want to talk about, like, for instance, I told my mom about the bat, and even you, I remember with, I think yours was actually yelling, right? Like, because I went through this, like, it was like letting out a ton of energy, yelling and screaming and stuff like that. And you were like, I don't need to do that.
I'm good.
I don't need to do that. And I remember thinking, like, you're full of it.
It actually didn't even happen technically that retreat. I went to another retreat, and that's when I finally was like, I am not playing all in life. And so I raged with the rage music, and I was slapping my hands on the floor, and they were red for over 24 hours, and
Yeah.
it hurt, and I was crying. But I realized in the moment of raging, it wasn't just my rage. I genuinely believe that I was healing past trauma from other generations because some of the stuff that was coming out, I was like, I didn't even know I had this anger. But it's like you open up the floodgates and watch what happens and comes out.
And I think this also plays into that as women, just like men are not really allowed to feel like it's not really socially acceptable for men to be vulnerable and sad. Like acceptable emotions for men are really happy and anger. Women, if we show anger, we're crazy. Right? We're emotional. We're dramatic. And so I think, if you're listening to this and you're like, I could never get a bat and hit my head and hit my bed, I would challenge that is old programming that's telling you that it's not socially acceptable. And what will people think if I actually have those emotions, if I actually have that level of anger, because I can without a doubt guarantee that there is a moment in your life that you have had enough anger to do that,
Well,
probably on a regular basis. We have the tool of like, if it's a bat, if you hit a pillow, in our family, it's like, do you need to scream into a pillow? Do you need to hit that pillow on the couch? There's no destruction, right? It's how do you move the mat? If it's sad, let yourself cry.
We also have this thing where sometimes we get really, and I think you were the one that taught me this, where all of a sudden we're just bickering for the sake of bickering. So I'll say, you know what? I declare the bickering game over for me. I'm going to dance the bickering wiggles out of my body.
Yes.
And so and we've known from episode 5, I'm a specific dancer. I'm an acquired taste. And so I will get it out and I will be over the top goofy, even more so than normal. And I'll make sounds and I'll be weird with my face and my tongue's out and I'm all over the place. And the kids start laughing because I'm like, I declare the awkward, petulant wiggles out of my body. And then all of a sudden, my daughter will say, I'm up. And then she'll do it. And then my son will do it. And we both realize, and then all of a sudden, all of us are in this moment of we no longer allowing this to define our life today. Watch what happens. Pretty magical.
And I think that's a great point, that dance when you don't feel like dancing. Dancing has this unbelievable effect.
Mhm.
Even if my kids are grumpy, I do the same thing. I turn on a song and I know some good dance moves. This is not the time that I employ those,
No,
right?
but you turn on music. That's a really good tip.
I do. I turn on
don't.
music. Yeah, I do. I turn it. Music is almost always playing in our home. My husband is an audiophile, so like there are speakers all throughout our house. So we turn on some kind of music, and it is truly, I try to dance like an idiot,
Right?
Because I want my kids to not be afraid of what they look like and
Can we
like
just
judge.
say though that Shannon's version of dancing like an idiot in my mind is still Dancing with the Stars championship. Okay, let's just be really, really honest here. She is a phenomenal dancer. I am
you're setting the bar really high for
I'm the
them.
most awkward duckling. So her version of Goofy is Dancing with the Stars. My version of Goofy is the Verizon things going off with poked holes. So it's all over the place.
I don't know. I was doing the shopping cart. I was doing the fax machine.
Still, I bet it's
the
great.
Sprinkler.
Yeah, yeah. Still jealous.
I had some good ones going, but generally it does, right? Like, and I have found that in the moments where I feel like dancing, that's great. That's fantastic. I also have taken to dancing when I'm mad or when I'm frustrated or when especially when I'm sad.
I love that.
If I can move when I'm sad, then because again, energy, you can't think these emotions away. It will not work. I can absolutely promise. I spent years trying to do it. We both did. You have to physically move it. So whether it's shaking your body, like a lot of times, like I even told my mom this is like when you're anxious, shake. It's like a dog that got done with a fight. The first thing that they do is shake their whole body. They physically move it out of their body. So when you are triggered,
stretches all the time.
Move it out of your body.
Yeah.
Move it out, whether that's crying, whether it's dancing, whether it's raging, whether it's whatever it is. Because what I can promise you is that if you don't move that out and if you don't teach your kids to move that out in a healthy way, that is when the problem comes.
It's really good. It's really good advice. I
So
got nothing
with
else
the
to add
remaining
to it.
time, wrap it up. Not like wrap it up, but I want to wrap it up with what's going on at why is Jane Fox triggered? But one other caveat I just have to add in here is when you said gosh darn.
Gosh darn.
I just want every listener, because I feel like you guys are our people. We say that because we don't want to have to mark the podcast explicit.
Did I say gosh darn?
You did.
Oh,
you were
I
like,
didn't even know.
gosh darn it. And I was like,
I'm proud.
my gosh.
Good.
I'm very proud of you.
That just came out naturally.
However, forewarned, when you meet Jane and I outside of this,
I have a mouth that loves certain words.
when my daughter is in the car and Jane calls, the very first thing that I say is, my daughter's in the car. Like before I say hi, anything, I say my daughter's in the
And
car.
I
because
still mess up.
You do. You did a couple of times yesterday.
I know. I think I caught it one out of
No,
the
it was
few.
good because she is also my parrot. She will repeat all of that.
So we've given my son permission that he is allowed to say certain words within the house, but when we're outside of the house, just not yet, because I'm done with this social construct of like, you can't say the words just because I'm a grown up and you're not. But it's more
They're
like
letters.
use it appropriately, right? If you're going to say it, like, don't just say it.
Oh, my kids nail the context.
But as far as like me, and honestly, I think what's been so wonderful is this podcast is I've actually calmed down. So my charged emotions are no longer charged and my intellect is back on. And I think the general gist of it all is that ever since I was young, I gave my power away. And it's not a name blame game. I want to be really clear here. Everything happened for me. So I had to go through what I had to go through as a child. So now I can look back on it and be like, no wonder I can do it differently for my family. Because if I didn't know better, I wouldn't have been doing better. And so for me, I've had very similar circumstances within the last year of giving my power away to men that are either farther along in a business or they're a professional in an industry that I'm not even a part of, but because they're older, therefore they're wiser, therefore they know better, therefore I take what they say as law and I go with the flow. And so this morning, a few things were brought to my attention that someone was undermining me and something that I had created. And instead of saying, well, they must know better, even though it doesn't feel right, integrity is a really big part of it. So what I did is I said no. And I wasn't catty or callous or manipulative about it. I just said, this doesn't work. And I'm charged because I said it. And that little girl in me was now seen. and I took over that ability. It doesn't mean it felt good in the moment because I'm still healing a lot of those wounds. But I did try in that moment to say, do I give my power away or do I hold firm, stand tall, right? We learned this also from Blair. You don't back down. You don't puff up. You stand your sacred ground. And so I did that today. That doesn't mean I'm not charged. I'm still charged.
I would love for you to rewind just a bit, though, and for the person who is listening right now, and they have something that they are charged in right now. It could have been a conversation. It could be something at work. It could be whatever. I want you to actually walk them through, because I think that you do it so often that it kind of gets glazed over, how you can look at that and distill what the teaching is. So like when that happened this morning and you instantly got triggered, can you share the thought process that you went through of how that trigger is actually a teacher, how it is working for you?
So the first step I did is when it was brought to my attention that someone was undermining something I had created, instead of being reactionary, I stopped and I thought, okay, why is this happening for me?
Pause.
Huge pause. Like put the phone away, because we're so quick to react, right? That's what we were led to believe. React. I didn't. That for me in of itself, like I should get a big award for that for the work, because I'm very reactive usually. So I stopped and I thought, okay. And then I thought, who is a safe person that I can bounce off my emotions with if that's something that I need? And so Shannon and I were texting back and forth. And then I also was working with my other friend. And so she called and I said, I'd like to know if I'm not seeing the bigger picture, or am I trusting this gut instinct? Because we say this far too often. I think our intuition is such a powerful resource that we have lost sight of. And if my intuition is saying that this doesn't feel right, why am I dismissing it? So I hit pause. I take a breath. I physically said out loud, which is what we were talking about earlier in the episode, I'm safe. I'm okay. I've done nothing wrong. This is happening for a reason. Is this happening because I'm still charged, or is this because I've been burned several times by men, unfortunately, for this circumstance? And am I bringing that situation into this situation or not?
Is it your programming causing the charge, or is it the situation?
Right. Then step 2, I give that person the benefit of the doubt instead of going into the name blame and jumping to conclusions, because 90% of the situation might not actually be what's happening. I reach out and I said, would you offer me some guidance here? Such and such has occurred, such and such has happened. Is this actually what is happening, even though we agreed on it? Certain other guidelines. I have not heard back. That's another thing. Step 3, just because a person doesn't react back to you doesn't mean you keep nagging, you keep jumping further and further down the rabbit hole. Because again, 90 seconds. Okay, I sent it. I haven't heard back. So now am I allowing my past programmings to create another narrative? No. So was I charged? Yes. Am I going to be reactionary? No. And so again, this gives that power back to the little boy or the little girl that maybe didn't have that power. And am I going to be okay? Yeah. Because at the end of the day, I'm healthy. I have a beautiful family. I am loved. I love myself. And again, I continue to say out loud, I am okay, right? This is not brain surgery where I am the neurosurgeon performing a technique in this one moment that if I miss, game over, right? And I think far too often we have to realize this is not a end of the world situation. And I think that's harder said than done. But if you can, I always say this to people, I'm not a brain surgeon, right? Everything's okay. People make mistakes. People are misunderstood. Things happen. What's the benefit of the doubt here? Because you can only learn if you guys are coming from a calm place, right? Emotions are high, your intellect is low. Reverse it. So for me, that's kind of where I'm at, is this podcast is so perfectly timed because we're saying all of these things. And while I was charged in the beginning, I no longer am.
I love that. And that's what you just said. And I think I annoy you sometimes with this phrase. It again comes from Dr. Becky of what's the most generous interpretation.
Yeah, Shannon has said this a few times. She's like, what's the most generous interpretation of this person?
Hates
and I was like,
when I do.
They're not generous. This person is not generous. This person is callous and selfish and She's like, yeah, but.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, Shannon is a really good reflection of me, right? Because so like the tattoo I have is opposites. So right now, if I'm charged, but Shannon's like, but what's the interpretation? You're like,
I don't want to see the interpretation. Right. I just want to be bad.
But she's awesome because I can come back to it. And so, find yourself a Shannon. Shannon, find yourself a Jane. But in those moments, how can you remind yourself that nothing's lost, nothing's gained. It just changes form. So I'm no longer charged. because I took the time to now be calm. Therefore, I have had a boson moment and I'm in the balance.
And I think that taking that space is absolutely vital, because if we react immediately without taking space to be like, okay, did this person do anything wrong? What is this trigger trying to tell me? What is it that I still need to heal? And those are not exactly the most fun things to look at, right? Those are the dark shadows that we don't necessarily want to come face to face with. And then being able to decide, okay, this isn't my programming. This isn't me being reactionary. This is me figuring out, okay, this is what this is teaching me. This is how I'm going to proceed. And it allows you to stay in integrity. It allows you to not have to go back and apologize later. And this is especially with kids. Like,
you're not giving away your worth.
And you're also not letting old programs taint the actual situation, because that is how a lot of relationships get destroyed, is because I'm holding on to baggage. Like when Jane says, I'm fine in a text, it's like all the friends who before have said, I'm fine, because they don't want to air out any grievances. Jane and I, it's just like, nothing hangs, right? It's like, okay, story in my head is this for most, but realizing that is that programming, right? That trigger most of the time has very little to do with the other person and more to do with what you are needing to heal.
Right. And I think there's going to be a podcast coming up where I want to talk about when you argue with your spouse, when you use certain tones and you get heated and all those things, instead of being upset about it, actually, it's the way it was supposed to happen because that argument happened. And I want to talk about how instead of not, going into the details of, well, he said this and he's talked to me like that. It's like, yeah, but that's what happened. And you obviously needed to hear that message in that tone. What did we learn from this? So, yeah, I'm grateful for today because perfect timing to walk me off that ledge and to know that I am safe. I am worthy. Everything is going to be great.
I'll send you your invoice later.
I always tell Shannon, send me an invoice. Thank you for joining us today. We hope that at least one part of this resonated with you. And if it did, what should they do, Shannon?
Please share this with somebody who you think could use it. And don't share it in like a passive aggressive way. This person needs to learn this trigger. Use it in a way that you guys can be productive. Yeah. So share this with somebody that you think could use to hear it. If you feel so called, it helps us so much to like and subscribe to the podcast, whether that's on YouTube or Spotify or Apple or wherever you are listening. It helps us greatly.
It really does.
And just keep coming back.
The dog is bothering me, so I'm just going to hold him because that's all he wants.
Yeah. No, he needs attention.
He could be the sponsor. He's so dang cute.
He is very cute.
Thank you for all of your time today. We hope that you enjoyed today's podcast, and we look forward to seeing you next week on episode 7.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
All right. Thanks for hanging out with us in the messy middle. If this episode made you feel seen, laugh a little, or think, wow, it's not just me, then you are exactly who this space is for.
And if you want to keep these conversations going, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And if you know another woman who's navigating hormones, motherhood, or just the general chaos of being human, send this her way.
And remember, we listen, we don't judge, and you don't have to have it all figured out to belong here. We'll see you next time.